Today, I want to tell you about a young lady named Georgina Symonds. She was something special from the very start. Even back in her school days, the boys could not leave her alone. And honestly, who could blame them? Georgina was pretty as an angel and had a personality that could light up any room. She was feisty, full of life, and she knew exactly how to get attention. But here's the thing. Even though she had all these young boys chasing after her, Georgina went and fell for an older guy. His name was Pete Deem, and he was 6 years older than her. Now, some of you might be raising your eyebrows at that, but young love does what young love does. These two stayed together for quite some time, and when Georgina was just 19 years old, she found out some big news. She was going to be a mama. That is right, a baby was on the way. So what did she do? She packed up her things and moved in with Pete and his mother over in Newport. And when that little baby girl finally arrived, they became a little family of their own. Both of them loved that child more than anything in this world. Now, Georgina really did love Pete. I am not going to say she did not. But here's the problem, my friends. She was still so very young. She was not ready to just sit at home and be a full-time mama. No, no, no. This girl still wanted to go out with her friends. She wanted to party. She wanted to live the life she had before that baby came along. And honestly, can you really blame a 19-year-old for feeling that way? And this is where that 6-year age gap started to show up in a big way. You see, while Georgina was bouncing off the walls with energy and wanting to do something exciting every single day, Pete was perfectly happy just sitting at home after a long day at work. He was the calm and steady type. She was the wild and restless type. You can already see where this is going, right? So what would happen most nights? Georgina would leave the house by herself to go have fun while Pete stayed home watching their daughter. That became their little routine. After a while, these two decided it was time to move out of Pete's mama's house and get their own place. And for a little bit, they lived like any normal family would. Pete went to work every day at an auto repair shop where he fixed cars as a mechanic. Meanwhile, Georgina got herself a job as a telemarketer. You know, one of those people who calls you trying to sell you things you do not need. But let me tell you something about Georgina. That telemarketer job was not cutting it for her. Not even close. She would sit there for 8 whole hours talking on the phone, and it bored her half to death. It was the same thing every single day, and this young woman wanted more out of life. She wanted excitement. She wanted adventure. She wanted money. That boring little job was giving her none of those things. So what did she do? She went out and found herself some extra work. After her regular job was done for the day, you could find Georgina performing at a nightclub in the evenings. Now that sounds a bit more exciting, does it not? But even that was not enough for our girl Georgina. The nightclub job was not bringing in enough money, and it still was not thrilling enough for her taste. So she made a big decision. Georgina started working as an escort. Now this job, my friends, this job changed everything for her. Suddenly she was spending time with rich men who had money to burn. And the more she worked, the more money came rolling in. Georgina had always cared a whole lot about how she looked. She paid close attention to her clothes, her hair, her makeup, everything. And now she finally had the cash to really invest in herself. She could buy fancy, expensive clothes. She could go get all kinds of beauty treatments done. Life was starting to look pretty good for Georgina. Now, what about Pete? Well, he was not too happy about what his partner was doing. I can tell you that much. But the poor man convinced himself that it was just temporary. He figured she would get it out of her system and come back to normal life. So he pretended like nothing was happening and just looked the other way. But Georgina kept on seeing different men, one after another after another. And then in 2012, she met a new one, a 50-year-old man named Peter Morgan. Now hold on, let me do some math here. Georgina was only 21 at the time. Peter was 50. That is almost 30 years between them, my friends. But here is the thing that made Peter different from all the others. This man was loaded. I am talking about a real-life millionaire with more money than he knew what to do with. Let me tell you a little bit about this Peter Morgan fellow, because his story is quite something. Peter came from money. His daddy owned a big company that built all kinds of farm buildings. At the best of times, that company had over 120 people working there. And Peter, he worked right alongside his father for many, many years, learning the business from the inside out. Back in 1992, Peter got married to a woman named Helen. They had met 8 whole years before that, so they had known each other for a very long time. Together they had 2 beautiful daughters, and life seemed pretty perfect for the Morgan family. But after a while, Peter got to thinking. He decided it was about time he stopped working for his daddy and started doing his own thing. So he went and set up his very own business. Now get this, his company did almost the same thing as his father's company, but with one little difference. Peter's business made prefab chicken huts. That is right, chicken huts. Little homes for chickens. And you know what? That chicken hut business took off like a rocket. The money started coming in faster than Peter could count it. Now, Peter had never really known what it was like to be poor. Even as a little boy, he always got whatever he wanted because his family was already doing well. But this chicken hut business, it made him a proper millionaire many times over. But here is the interesting part. All that money did not really change Peter as a person. Maybe because he was already used to having nice things, the wealth did not go to his head. He kept living a quiet family life with his wife Helen, and he stayed faithful to her. He was a good husband, at least for a while. Then in the late 2000s, Peter and Helen made a big decision together. They were going to sell the Chicken Hut Company. They had plans for what they would do with all that money. They wanted to get into real estate, buying old buildings and fixing them up nice, and also buying regular houses to rent out or sell. When they sold that business, they got millions and millions of pounds. We are talking serious money here. And they wasted no time putting it to use. They bought themselves a mill. They bought a castle from the 13th century. Yes, a real castle. And they scooped up all kinds of other properties in the area too. This real estate business turned out to be another winner for Peter. The money just kept on coming. But there was a problem. All this work was stressing the poor man out, something terrible. It got so bad that he started losing his hair from a condition called alopecia. His body was telling him that something had to change. So Peter and Helen talked it over and decided they would step back from work for a while. Now they were still pretty young at this point, but they had more than enough money saved up to take a nice long break. Peter was in his 40s, and he was starting to feel something that a lot of men feel at that age. You might call it a midlife crisis. And since Peter had money to burn, he started buying himself some toys. First, it was a motorcycle. But you know what? Anybody can buy a motorcycle. Peter was a millionaire, and he needed something better than what regular folks had. So he went and bought himself some fancy sports cars. But wait, there is more. This man also got himself a helicopter and a tank. Yes, a real military tank and an American fire truck too. I am not making this up, my friends. But the toys were not the only thing that changed about Peter. His whole behavior started shifting, especially after a trip he took in 2003. He and some of his buddies went to Amsterdam for a few days, and it was there, for the very first time in his life, that Peter paid for the company of a woman. You know what I am talking about. Now, this did not mean Peter went completely off the rails after that trip. Actually, he went right back to being faithful to his wife Helen for many more years after that one little slip-up. He behaved himself just fine until 2011 came along. That was when one of Peter's friends showed him something on his phone. It was an app, and this app lets you order a lady to come keep you company without even leaving your house. You just tap, tap, tap on your phone and someone shows up. Well, that changed everything for Peter. From that point on, he started cheating on his wife more and more often. At first, he would do it about once a month, and every single time, he made sure to pick a different woman. He never saw the same one twice. That was his little rule. Until he met Georgina Symonds. Georgina worked for the same agency as all those other women Peter had been seeing. But from the very first moment he laid eyes on her, something was different. She made such a strong impression on him that he knew right away he would be seeing her again. And he also knew he was not going to wait a whole month to do it. So Peter started meeting up with Georgina once a week, every single week, like clockwork. And with each meeting, Peter fell deeper and deeper into this thing with her. In his mind, they were like a real couple, like actual lovers who cared about each other. But here is the thing, my friends, and this is important. Georgina did not see it that way at all. To her, Peter was just another client, just another man who paid her money for her time. Thanks to him, she could earn good money and use it to give herself and her family a better life. That is all it was to her, business. Peter, though, he did not seem to understand that. Every week he paid her 150 pounds for every hour they spent together, and on top of that, he showered her with expensive gifts. He paid for her to stay at fancy hotels and luxury spas. He even bought her a car. This man had no interest in saving money when it came to Georgina. He spent and spent and spent. Peter was getting more and more wrapped up in this thing with Georgina. He even started trying to make himself look better for her. Remember, there was more than 20 years between them, and Peter was very aware of that. So he went on a diet and lost some weight. He got his teeth fixed up nice. He started dressing in completely different clothes than he used to wear. He was doing everything he could to close that age gap, at least in appearance. He was so crazy about this woman that seeing her once a week was not enough anymore. One time, when his wife Helen left town, Peter jumped at the chance. He offered Georgina 1,000 pounds to spend the whole night with him. He just wanted to be near her as much as possible. At this point, Georgina had become more important to Peter than his own wife. And remember, he was still married this whole time. He was doing everything in his power to make sure Helen never found out about any of this. And for a while, it worked. Helen had no idea what her husband was up to. But then came Valentine's Day in 2013. Helen found out that her husband had bought a bouquet of flowers for someone. And since she was definitely not the one who received those flowers that day, she started getting suspicious. Something was not right. Her husband was having an affair. She could feel it. But Helen did not have any real proof at the time. So she kept quiet and waited. She waited for 2 whole years. 2 whole years before she finally decided to sit down and talk to Peter about what she suspected. When 2015 came around, Helen finally confronted her husband. And you know what Peter did? He did not even try to lie to her. He told her everything. The whole truth came pouring out. And just like that, their marriage was over. 22 years together, gone. But for Peter, this was not entirely bad news. Now he could finally be with Georgina out in the open. No more hiding, no more sneaking around. So Peter came to Georgina with a new idea. See, he had always been jealous of all the other men she was seeing. It drove him crazy thinking about her with other clients. So he proposed a deal. What if she agreed to stop seeing other men completely? What if she only saw him and nobody else? In exchange, he would pay her around 10,000 pounds every single month. And on top of that, she could move into a house right next to the castle he owned. She would live there for free. Now, that was a pretty tempting offer, was it not? Georgina would not have to see multiple men anymore. She would have just one client who paid her more than enough money to live comfortably. Plus, she knew Peter would keep buying her gifts on top of that monthly payment. So in August, Georgina packed up her things and moved into that house by the castle. Now, what about poor Pete, the father of her child? Well, he was not happy about this at all. He knew exactly what Georgina was doing for work, and he had never liked it. They had agreed that their relationship would be open, meaning they could both see other people, but that did not mean Pete was okay with the situation. He wanted Georgina to have a normal job. He wanted her to live with him and their daughter, but poor Pete also knew the truth. He could not compete with Peter Morgan, not even close. Peter had more money than Pete could ever dream of. Peter could give Georgina a life that Pete could never provide. And Georgina? She did not seem to care much about what Pete thought. She made her decision and moved out of their house, taking their daughter with her. That was the end of her relationship with Pete. So now Georgina was living in this beautiful house owned by her rich sponsor. It seemed like she had everything a person could want. She lived rent-free in a big, fancy home. Peter kept showering her with gifts all the time. He bought her a brand new BMW. He paid for her to get plastic surgery. He paid for horseback riding lessons. He took her and her daughter on fancy vacations to other countries. Whatever Georgina wanted, Peter made it happen. And every month, money showed up in her account. Sometimes it was 7,000 pounds. Sometimes it was as much as 10,000 pounds. Either way, she was not hurting for cash. So everything was perfect, right? Georgina had it all. Well, not exactly. See, even though she had all this money and all these nice things, Georgina was not happy living in that house. In her mind, she was still just doing a job. This was work to her, nothing more. Peter supported her with money, but in return, Georgina had to be available whenever he called. Day or night, whenever Peter wanted her, she had to be ready. And that started to really bother her. Back when she was working with different clients, she had freedom. If she wanted to take a day off, she could take a day off. If she needed a break for a few days, no problem. But now, living in Peter's house, it felt like she was on the clock every single hour of every single day. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. There was no escape. In addition to everything else, she really missed seeing her friends and didn't want to invite them over to the house where she was living. It wasn't her home, you see. Living there was part of the agreement, the deal she had made between her and Peter. Therefore, she felt that it was inappropriate and weird for her to invite her friends there. Like, how do you explain that situation? The whole situation began to weigh her down more and more heavily. She was taking it worse and worse mentally as time went on. She supposedly had everything she could want. The nice house, the money, the lifestyle. But in fact, deep down, she had nothing real. Now, before I tell you what happened next that changed everything, let me just say something real quick. If you are still watching this story and you want to hear more cases like this one, it would mean the world to me if you could hit that subscribe button. I pour my heart into bringing you these true stories, and these victims deserve to have their stories told. Your support keeps me going. Okay, back to what happened to poor Georgina. Her mental state deteriorated significantly, got really bad when her former partner Pete went missing in November 2015. They were no longer a couple at the time. They had broken up. But since he was the father of her child, they continued to keep in touch regularly because of their daughter. And when he went missing, he could not be found for 2 whole days, only after which time a tragic discovery was made that nobody expected. He was found in the woods where he had taken his own life. He had committed suicide. No one close to him, including Georgina, realized that all that had happened in their relationship had affected his mental health very badly. Pete took it hard, really hard, to the point where he began to fall into depressive states and couldn't see a way out. Shortly before he disappeared, there was a rather serious argument between him and Georgina, and that was the last time she ever saw him alive. Pete was the second person Georgina lost that year because her dad had died earlier in the spring. The two closest people in her life left this world in such a short space of time, and it was a huge blow to Georgina emotionally. She didn't quite know how she was supposed to cope with all that loss and pain. And increasingly, she began to turn to alcohol and other drugs to numb the pain. Peter noticed that she was taking what had happened to her very badly. He tried to help her as much as he could because he genuinely cared. He cared deeply that she was happy, and he could not just watch her drown her sorrows in ever-increasing amounts of alcohol and substances. However, her behavior toward him changed completely over time. Although she was still aware of the agreement that existed between them, she did not treat him very well at all. She was very harsh and abrasive towards him and increasingly shouted at him for no good reason. This difficult situation continued into January 2016 when the 25-year-old was hospitalized. On that day, she overdosed on drugs, and Peter drove her to the hospital to get help. While she was there recovering, he asked her to tell the doctor about her addiction problem. He hoped that when she told them about her problem, she would finally get the help she desperately needed. However, the opposite happened. The complete opposite. The doctors became very concerned about her condition, and knowing that she was raising her young daughter, they reported the case to social services to investigate. Georgina realized immediately that they could take the child away from her if she didn't get her life in order quickly. She believed it was Peter's fault, all his fault. After all, he was the one who persuaded her to tell the doctors everything. It was his idea, and now she will suffer the consequences because of him. From that moment on, the relationship between her and Peter deteriorated considerably and got really tense. Georgina realized that she had to do everything possible to free herself from him. She no longer wanted to live by his side, but she had become accustomed to the standard of living he provided her. Therefore, she knew that she had to play it right, be smart, so that Peter would at least leave her the house where she lived with her daughter. However, he couldn't do that even if he wanted to, because half of the house actually belonged to his ex-wife. The man seemed not to notice that Georgina was trying to take advantage of him and use him. It seemed to him that at this difficult moment for her, she needed him more than ever. That's why he didn't leave her or kick her out of his house, despite the fact that he began to suspect that after Pete's death, Georgina started seeing an old friend romantically. However, he wasn't sure about this suspicion, so he came up with the idea to install wiretaps in the house where she lived to spy on her. He bought a listening device that he plugged into one of the electrical outlets in the house. The device could be fitted with a SIM card, the same one found in cell phones. And whenever he wanted to listen to what was going on at home, he simply had to call the number. Apparently, he did this so that he could monitor whether Georgina was overdoing it with alcohol and drugs. He wanted her to come out of it, to get better, so that everything would be as before. He didn't want her daughter to be taken away from her by the authorities. And thanks to the device, he had the ability to control and monitor her constantly. But actually, eavesdropping on Georgina became his complete obsession. He listened to what was going on in her house several times a day, every single day, and he could listen to one conversation for up to 2 hours straight. But the eavesdropping was not fruitless or pointless. During the many hours he spent listening to what the woman was saying, mostly on the phone talking to friends, he learned that she was lying to him. And not just on one point, but about many things. Peter learned that social services had determined some time ago that there was nothing wrong with Georgina's daughter, that her mother was taking good care of her, and that there was no need for them to continue to control the family at all. Meanwhile, Peter had been living in the belief all along that Georgina could lose her daughter at any moment, because she told him that she was still under the watchful eye of social services and that no decision had yet been made. She manipulated him in this way on purpose. She knew that with this strategy, she was managing to arouse his pity and sympathy, and thus extort even more money and things from him. Thanks to the wiretap, Peter also learned that Georgina intends to return to her previous style of work. She no longer wants to work exclusively for one man like him. As soon as it can be arranged that Peter will rewrite the house she lives in to her name, she intends to immediately break the contract that was between them and find a few more clients, preferably in London, because even more money can be made there with wealthier men. She knew very well how to get Peter to rewrite the house to her ownership. It was to convince him to do so with a recording in her possession, a video she had. Sometime earlier, Peter had decided to spend the night in the company of Georgina and another woman. He invited them both to his house while his wife was away on a trip. The women dressed in things belonging to Helen, his wife, and eventually they all ended up in bed together. Georgina, in secret from Peter, of course, recorded the whole thing on her phone and thought it would now be her ace up her sleeve, her trump card. If Peter did not agree to rewrite the house to her name, she would make the recording available to his wife, his children, and the entire family. Peter had no intention of letting that happen under any circumstances. He didn't want anyone, especially his daughters, to see the video of what he had done. On January 12th, 2016, around 9:30 in the morning, Peter went to meet Georgina at her house. He wanted to settle the matter of the recording once and for all. When he arrived there, Georgina was on the phone with her friend chatting away. She arranged to meet her at 4 o'clock in the afternoon the same day. When she finished talking, Peter immediately told her what was the purpose of his visit. He offered to give Georgina the house she was living in completely, and to be added to Peter's life insurance policy and receive £1 million in the event of his death. The only thing he wanted in return was all copies of the recording, every single one. However, Georgina did not agree to this deal. Once again, she began accusing Peter that social services might take her daughter away because of him. Peter, however, was well aware that this was not true at all. Social services were no longer interested in Georgina and her child. He heard exactly how she told her friend about it on the phone through his listening device. He realized then that he would not get anything settled with her this way through negotiation. Therefore, he grabbed the cord he had tied around his wrist, wrapped it around Georgina's neck from behind, and tightened it hard. He hoped that she would be scared enough to change her mind, that she would beg him to spare her life, that she might apologize to him and promise not to use the video against him. But none of these things happened at all, and Peter knew that it had all gone too far now. He couldn't let Georgina have one more reason to blackmail him for the rest of his life, which is why he didn't stop squeezing. The woman still managed to tell Peter that he would pay for what he had just done to her. But he tightened the cord further and further until she stopped moving completely, until she was dead. That same day, after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Georgina's 5-year-old daughter waited for her mother to pick her up from school. She was never late, not once. But on that day, she didn't show up at all. When Georgina's family was notified by the school, they immediately started looking for her everywhere. Also concerned was her friend with whom she was supposed to meet that day, because Georgina did not show up at the agreed place like they planned. Everyone tried to determine where she might be. However, she was not at home, nor did she answer her phone when anyone called. They thought that maybe Peter would know anything about her whereabouts, but the man claimed he did not know where she might be at all. Seeing no other way out, they informed the police about her disappearance around 8 o'clock at night. Since Peter was the person she was seeing regularly, he was interrogated by police. But he testified that he had no idea where she might be. Georgina disappeared without leaving any message or trace. Police officers checked the activity of her cell phone, whether it was on, and where she had logged on recently. And it was determined that on January 12th at around 12 noon, the phone must have been on a farm belonging to Peter's ex-wife. When asked if he knew where the phone could be, he denied it at first, but thought at the time that maybe Georgina wanted to talk to his ex-wife there that day, which is why her phone was near her house. There was only one problem with this story. Helen was not at home at the time, as she was on vacation away. That day, when the policeman informed him of this fact, Peter suddenly recalled that he had taken Georgina's phone so that she couldn't buy any drugs for herself, and he hid it in his car located on the farm. And indeed, Georgina's phone was found in one of Peter's cars, which was parked near his ex-wife's house, just like he said. However, the whole situation made investigators even more suspicious of him. While everyone was busy looking for Georgina everywhere, he himself called her phone number several times, and not once did he mention that he had previously taken the phone from her. All this was suspicious enough that the man was questioned again more intensely, and finally in the morning, he couldn't stand the pressure anymore and confessed to everything. He told investigators that he was the one who killed her and hid her body in a workshop located next to his ex-wife's house, and he even gave them the keys to that workshop to go find her. The investigators would have figured it out sooner or later anyway, because Peter forgot about something very important. There were several security cameras installed near his ex-wife's house, and one of them was aimed at this very garage area. Later, investigators checked the footage carefully, and it showed Peter driving his car up there around 12 noon, and from the trunk, he took out a large black bag which he carried inside the workshop. Police officers already knew that the bag contained Georgina's body wrapped up. During the interrogation, Peter also admitted why he did it, his reasoning. He loved Georgina very much and was able to do anything for her. For her, he gave up his marriage, which lasted 22 years. He gave up half of an estate worth more than 20 million pounds, which he had to give to his wife in the divorce. Nothing mattered as much as Georgina to him. He loved her and thought she reciprocated his affection and feelings. He felt that they were getting along very well together, and that was until mid-November, when Georgina's former partner took his own life. Things began to deteriorate between them after that, and when suspecting her of cheating on him, he set up a wiretap in her home to spy. He learned things that shocked him to his core. He was devastated when he learned that Georgina was planning to marry another man, and that she is only with him to get as much money out of him as possible. He sacrificed so much for her, his whole life, and Georgina was so ungrateful in return. He loved her deeply, and she clearly didn't even like him at all. However, when the trial began a year later, Peter changed his testimony a bit. He admitted that he was the one who took Georgina's life. Yes. However, he claimed he was unaware of what he was doing at the time. He was diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder, specifically Asperger's syndrome, and this made him unable to make rational decisions in stressful situations, he claimed. However, throughout his entire life, he ran various successful companies in which he often had to make difficult decisions while under stress, and never once did his illness negatively affect his life or business. Therefore, this explanation was rejected by the court. Peter's defense lawyers tried to mitigate his punishment by explaining that the murder occurred in an act of passion. Peter learned that his mistress had been lying to him for a long time and that she was about to blackmail him with that video, except that in his phone was found a list of things Peter had written down the day before the murder. The list included string, plastic bags, gloves, and several more items that he needed on January 12th. If the crime had been committed in an act of passion, such a prepared list should not exist at all. The jury did not believe any of these versions of his story, and Peter Morgan was sentenced to life imprisonment. He will spend a minimum of 25 years in prison before he can even be considered for parole. Thank you so much for listening until the very end. If you like my channel and would like to support my work, please give it a like and subscribe. It really helps me out. Goodbye for now, and stay safe out there.